Hi, this is Patty Hodge, and this is Dr. Nurse's Rock. And this is one video in a series of 30 videos that we're producing throughout the month of April on topics related to grief. And today's very special guest is Dr. Dawson Church, who is very special to me in ways that he may not know. He helped me during the period of getting my doctoral degree back in 2009 through 2010. And so I'm saying a very warm welcome to you today, Dr. Church.
It's wonderful to be here, Patty.
Thank you. Let me tell people a little bit about you in case on the very small chance they don't know who you are. So, Dawson Church is an award-winning science writer with four best-selling books to his credit. The Genie in Your Genes was the first book, this one, to demonstrate that emotions drive gene expression. Mind to Matter showed that the brain creates much of what we think of as objective reality. Bliss Brain demonstrates that peak mental states rapidly remodel the brain for happiness. Spiritual Intelligence maps the neuroscience of awakened science states of consciousness. Dawson founded the Veterans Stress Solution, which has offered free treatment to over 20,000 veterans with PTSD. His groundbreaking research has been published in many prestigious scientific journals. He shares how to apply these breakthroughs to health and athletic performance through EFTuniverse.com, one of the most visited alternative healing sites on the web. So there's more that can be said about you, but it will take up all of our 30 minutes to do that. So once again, thank you for being here. And since our topic is about grief, I asked if it would be okay with you to speak about epigenetics and how grief may manifest and how it comes through generations, if that's real, and what can be done about that from your point of view.
Well, I'm guessing, Patty, that those of the members of our wonderful healing community who are watching and listening have probably had either a short-term event in their lives that has triggered grief or maybe a long-term pattern of grief. And so I just want to start with saying that I'm just so sorry that you've had to deal with this because I know how grief affects just everything else in your life. It's just like a frame that when you're in that perspective, just makes it very difficult for any other part of your life to feel free of that influence of grief. So I'm just sorry you're dealing with what you're dealing with because I know it's really, really difficult. And having gone through several periods of my own life of grief about various things, I know what it's like. I lost a child, for example, when I was in my early 30s. We had my wife and I had a baby that died, and then we had a tragic wildfire in 2017 and lost our home and all our possessions. So we've gone through several cycles of losses, and everybody has. And it's not like people have lost jobs, people have lost loved ones, people have lost. Uh, Maybe their health, maybe abilities they once had and no longer have. Certainly, when you get to be in your 70s, like me, you have lost some abilities to do things you can't quite do, used to be able to do. So loss is just interwoven with the human experience. And so I know how much of a burden it can be. And the good news is that our systems are well equipped to handle transient stress. So if I am stressed over the loss of something that was precious to me, then there's very naturally going to be a trough. And our stress hormones will be high for a while. The genes that code for those stress hormones are going to be expressed for a while. And then that drops off. And research just shows that unless you have some kind of intervention that drives you deeper into it, that you're likely to recover. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. And that's worth knowing that the natural human cycle is to assimilate those events and then to recover. And what most people don't realize is that research shows that two-thirds of people do. One third of people becomes trapped in a downward spiral. but two-thirds of people actually use the adverse experiences of their lives for what's called post-traumatic growth. So post-traumatic growth is normal. And in my book, Spiritual Intelligence, I talk a lot about this and about how it's natural for us to bounce back. And if we get stuck in that downward spiral, something's interrupted the natural process of healing in our lives. And that's what we have to make sure we don't get sucked into. When we do, chronic stress, chronic high cortisol, chronic high norepinephrine, adrenaline, chronic high stress chemicals, chronic produces chronic depression of all kinds of positive neurochemicals, those involved in cell signaling and cell repair amongst them. So people who are stressed age really rapidly. I was just looking at a news story about a refugee from the Syrian civil war that raged for so long. And you see this guy holding his child and looking at his face, you think that, oh, he's holding his grandchild, and then you realize no, he's holding his child. He's aged more than 20 years. And what we see in epigenetic studies is that people who are dealing with this impact of grief and stress and loss and aren't able to enter that cycle of post-traumatic growth, they age really quickly. And in one long-term set of studies, they found that the difference between people who are stuck in that chronic high cortisol, unresolved loss cycle, they die 20 years early. So it acts an absolutely enormous toll on the body. So I really want to encourage you, whatever you're dealing with, find the resources, and there are resources, we'll get into that later, but find the resources to resolve it. You can get over the death of a child, the loss of a job, the loss of money. Any of these things is recoverable, and we human beings are incredibly resilient. You are resilient, and there are ways of sparking that resilient and shifting all that gene expression and then moving into that cycle of post-traumatic growth.
Thank you for being so hopeful. That's probably the number one thing that we need to offer to people is hope. So what tell us a little bit about that gene expression thing. Because I'm not sure that everyone is familiar with epigenetics and what that
Oh,
means.
okay,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, so we have about 20,000 genes in the human genome, and many of them are fixed. About 15% of them are fixed, like height, eye color, things like that are fixed genes. They turn on and they're the same way your whole life. But about 80% of the genome is dynamic. And so you eat certain foods that turns on certain genes. You don't eat other things, and you have various kinds of responses to things in the environment. And the class of genes that I'm most focused on in my research is genes that have to do with inflammation and immunity, because inflammation is the common pathway in virtually all disease. Almost every disease has some component of inflammation to it. So cancer, autoimmune diseases, heart diseases, all the modern lifestyle diseases are all implicated with inflammation. And you look at those inflammation genes, and if they're dialed way, way, way up, and we're producing all these pro-inflammatory substances, neurochemicals in our bodies, that is what degrades our body. It degrades our body rapidly and severely, and that in turn leads to that 20-year earlier death. So it's not like that single, negative thought is going to have a big effect, but that single negative thought repeated hour by hour and day by day and month by month begins to really degrade your body. And these genes are triggered by emotion, by thought, by spiritual experiences. All of these things are triggering the genes in a positive or negative direction. In people who meditate, for example, in spiritual intelligence, I have many studies I review of meditators, and within about 3 minutes, we can measure the expression of genes that repair our cells, that help us digest our food better, that promote deep sleep. All these genes are being sparked by a few minutes of meditation every day. And then what that does longer term, and by longer term, I don't mean like years, I mean 30 days. I did one randomized controlled trial that showed that within 30 days of using the eco meditation technique, which is a very simple evidence-based combination of different scientifically proven methods, but people began doing eco meditation within 30 days. We were able to measure using MRI scans anatomical changes in their brains. So it's not like it's going to take years for the results to show up. It shows up within weeks of starting these positive kinds of techniques. We recommend tapping. Tapping on acupressure points is very, very useful for releasing any kind of stuck pattern of stress. And then meditation is the baseline of well-being. Whatever else you're doing, meditate. And what I recommend people start by doing is downloading eco meditation and using it for 30 days. That's the dose we found was effective in that MRI study. And again, structural change in the brain. So all of this is triggered by gene expression. And we are turning those genes on or turning them off by our emotions, our states of consciousness, our thoughts, and by reversing stress. All of these things are beneficial, that are beneficial are turned on. And if we're stressed, they're all shut down. So this is like teeter-totter, seesaw effect. Stress and the relaxation response. Either you've got one going or the other. When you're in stress, all of these beneficial parts of our bodies, our cellular function, gene expression function, are shut down, and the reverse is true. The moment you start to relax, you use eco meditation, you tap, you breathe deeply, it sets off this chain reaction of genes in your body, and you're literally shifting which genes are expressing purely by these stress reduction techniques. So that's why, again, for me, the non-negotiable. If I'm stressed, I tap. We've now tapped with over 20,000 veterans. We're tapping with people in Ukraine now, and you just can't imagine the level of trauma there is in Ukraine. Working with therapists there, school teachers there, and we work with them, we tap with them, and suddenly they start sleeping, they start breathing deeply again. They're still in the middle of a war, but they gain the ability to release that stress, and that allows all those beneficial gene expression changes to kick in.
All of this it's real and it's miraculous all at the same time. And it just reminds me that we already have been given everything we need to recover. We just have to dip into the toolbox that you're offering to people. And that's a wonderful gift to the world. So I'll be sure to include all the links to all of these things that you're talking about here. So if we set out to intentionally do something to help our gene expression to keep us healthier longer and reduce the inflammation and keep us youthful in thinking and hopeful and all of those good things. The first place to start would be where?
I would usually start with very, very simple interventions and also ones that don't require thinking about what to do. Because it's hard when you're stressed to think. What happens when we have that stress response kick in is our body redeploys its resources away from rest, digest, sleep, repair, all of those healthy processes and into the stress response, fight, flight, freeze. And what happens when we do that is that there's a big redistribution of resources, including in our brains. And so our thinking brain, the cortex, the executive centers of our brains shut down, literally. The blood vessels in those parts of our brains when we're stressed shrink by up to 80%. And so here you are, you may have learned nonviolent communication or active listening or something like that, or gone to a therapist, but when you're under stress and those blood vessels in your prefrontal cortex have shrunk by 80%, you can't remember any of those great tools you learned, but you can tap. Or breathe. You can remember, okay, just breathe. I can't figure out what to do right now. You know how your brain just gets shut down. Like I remember my wife and I have a wonderful relationship, but I have had other previous relationships where there was conflict. And I know when there'd be conflict in the relationship, my brain just shut down to the point where I couldn't think what to say. I just couldn't think how to respond to what someone was saying. I was so stressed and my blood vessels had shrunk and I just couldn't respond effectively. So that's when you can do a simple intervention like breathe or tap. So start with the easy ones. Now, is that all you need? No, there are wonderful steps you can take beyond that. And meditation is the key baseline. And then you're going to need help. So make sure you have a therapist, make sure you have an energy psychology professional to help you have other people you can call on, both in the allopathic medicine world, like make sure you have a great doctor and great nurses, great professionals in the medical field, and also great alternative medicine people. Like just last month, actually, I personally was stuck in a recurring issue, and I really wasn't able to fully pull myself out of it. So my wife said, Dawson, we're going to make an appointment, and we're going to get have you work with somebody. And I did. I did a long 2 hour session with a psychologist, and that helped me extricate myself. So why? 50 years after I learned meditation and energy healing, do I still need a session with a psychologist? Because we never get to the point where we don't need anything. Where all of us are growing, all of us learning. We're finding new parts of ourselves that need healing. So have all of those resources on hand. Have all the self-help on hand, but have your clinical EFT practitioner on hand. Have your doctor on hand. Have really good people available. So when the water is too deep, when you are struggling, you can reach out and have them throw you a lifeline.
Well, that's what I call your tribe here on Dr. Nurse's Rock.
Yes.
Yeah, you pull in all the people that you know will be a support to you. And it's okay to let go of the people that are not supporting you because they're just part of the stress machine that we're trying to get a handle on, right? So thank goodness you found a good psychologist.
Yeah, it amazes me how people will hang on to friendships, for example, relationships with
Yes.
people who they don't feel good about being with. Like I know my wife had a friend many years ago, and whenever she'd get back from lunch or an event with this woman, she would just feel down because this person's energy had pulled her down, and she was saying, "But I've been friends with her for 30 years." And I said, it's okay if you want to let her go. You don't have to keep on being friends with her. So notice the people in your life. Like one little handy yardstick we use in EFT is the 0 through 10 scale. And we just have you assess yourself, okay, if I do this thing, how do I feel before and after? I'm having this memory and I'm down to I feel really bad. I'm down to a 2 out of 10 on the happiness scale. And then if I tap, what am I now? Inversely, I have pain. What is my pain? It's an 8 out of 10. I tap, and then have I dropped down to 3 or 4, or maybe even a 0? When I do this with large groups of people, because I do a lot of workshops, live workshops, in-person workshops, virtual workshops, I have people raise their hand after we tap, and they'll think about a traumatic event in their lives, and we'll have them score it. And so there'll be a 7 or an 8 or a 9 or even a 10. And then we'll do that simple tapping routine. I'll ask them 5 minutes later how they feel. Many of them are down to really low numbers. So use these simple techniques first. And if people make you feel bad, let them go. There's no obligation to hang on to people that make you feel bad. If it's a toxic job, let it go. If there are toxic people in your life, let them go. Surround yourself by inspiring people and be one of them yourself.
Exactly that. Exactly. So I can't thank you so I can't thank you enough because you're so wise and you're so open. And obviously, just this whole light just comes from you. We know that you're busy in the world helping, and that just shows in everything that you're saying and doing. So, is there anything that I should have asked you in this little time that we're together that you would like to just tell the rest of the world before we sign off?
A few things, Patty. One is that problems are soluble
Yes.
and that emotions are transient. Emotions arise and emotions subside. And what you find is people have emotions, either really pleasurable emotions or unpleasurable emotions, and that our gene expression, our hormones, our our biological markers all rise and fall with them. So they're transient. And when you're stuck anywhere, especially being stuck in grief, it's time to find a way of moving your system through that. So know that this grief comes like, when my son Montague died, I didn't, I didn't know, but there was a grief cycle. It took a while. And then the grief cycle was over. So those things start, middle, and end. And that's one thing to be aware of. The other thing to think about is energy. We call this whole field of healing energy psychology, energy medicine. And what you're doing when you tap on acupressure points, when you do eco meditation, when you breathe, you are changing your energy. And what research shows is that energy gives rise to matter. There's a whole amazing debate going on at very, very high academic levels in various universities around the world right now about consciousness. And they're finding so much evidence that matter and space and time arise from consciousness. And when you change your consciousness, then matter changes. So you may be really focused on trying to fix money or fix your body or fix your emotions or fix people outside of you. And I got to tell you that that's really secondary. Primary is consciousness. Shift your consciousness, and you'll be amazed how when you shift your consciousness, matter has no choice but to follow. And so when you're faced with a problem, rather than treating it as a material problem, I've got to go fix the symptom, got to go fix this feeling, got to go fix this person, the situation, that outer fixation, that outer focus is actually simply distracting us from where change really needs to start, which is within and with energy. So when you change your energy around something, then you'll be amazed how often the outer stuff changes. Like one woman I was working with on a long-term group program of ours, she was really mad with her husband. They'd been married for many, many years. They had this fairly stale and somewhat bitter relationship, and they're both long since retired. And uh, one of her complaints was that he doesn't do much around the house or the yard, so all is up to me. And so she'd had this complaint for years and years, actually decades. And so when I said to her, treat that as an energy problem. She was pretty mad at me. She said, we bought 40 fruit trees to plant in our orchard this year, and they've just been sitting out there in pots for the last few months because my husband hasn't been planting them. So that's not energy, that's matter, and it's real. So I said, well, I'm going to challenge you anyway. Just go ahead and tap, release of course, you have all this negative energy around it, do some breath work, tap, meditate, and just fix the frustration you feel. I don't care about your husband. I really care about you. And I want you not to feel all those unpleasant feelings. So she did. She just meditated, she tapped, and she released. And she just began to send nothing but unconditional love toward her husband. The next month's live call, she came on and she told the group, she said, you won't believe what happened today. I woke up late this morning, looked out the window, and my husband had gotten up early and planted all those fruit trees. So often things happen in the outside world when we treat them as issues of energy rather than matter. So focus on this as an energy issue, not a thing you have to fix out there. Most of the things we think are out there are really actually in our own consciousness. And you'll find that as you shift your consciousness, things naturally shift in your environment. So those are two ways to think about this, to focus on relaxation, stress reduction, acceptance, love, taking care of yourself, and as an energy issue rather than a material one.
That's marvelous. It's marvelous. And I'm so grateful to you again. So this has been a wonderful experience for me, and I'm grateful that you came to talk with us, this little community today, this growing community. I'm going to keep a positive outlook about this. And I would like to invite you back whenever you feel like you'd like to do that, to come visit Dr. Nurse's Rock again.
Would
I
love
know
to. Thank you. Thanks,
I
Patty.
I thank you very much, and hopefully everyone that hears this will be as blessed as I feel right now. So thank you, and bye for now.